I tried TFT. I tried it. I played it. I think it's pretty fun. And I think it's a genre that I find very interesting, actually. I want to try auto chess, too. I want to try both. This might be a stupid question, but what is auto chess? So auto chess is a mod for Dota, and then TFT is a mod for League, or like I guess, and it's a different game type for both of them. Essentially, the way auto chess works is it's like a deck building game that happens live. So this is how the game works. The game will start, at least in TFT's case. I'm not exactly sure about auto chess. When it starts, there's 8 players, and there's just a series of units, essentially, that are circling. And the units are champions from League of Legends, and they all have items. So in the beginning, all 8 players are unlocked from like this little cell, and then they can run up and grab whatever they want. I'll use fighting game examples. So let's say in the beginning you grab Ryu. You're like, okay, I get Ryu, and he's got a headband, and the headband gives him like extra, I don't know, EX gauge. Sick, right? So this is like how a Street Fighter auto chess or whatever would work. So you grab Ryu in the beginning, and he has like a headband that gives him extra stuff, right? You're like, sick, I got Ryu. So it goes back, and then round 1, Ryu will fight some minions. He'll kill the minions. He'll get like items for you, and then you have gold, and use that gold to buy other characters. So let's say Ryu has 2 classifications. He has 1 that's Shotokan Karate, and then 2 he has let's say Satsui no Hado. Those are like his 2 categories. So in the top it'll say like, you have 1 Ryu. So Ryu counts for 1 out of 3 Shotokans and 1 out of 4 Satsui no Hado. So when you get to buy stuff, let's say that like on the bottom of the bar, there's Ken and Akuma. And you're like, these are good picks for me because Ryu is 1 out of 3 Shotokan Karate. And if I buy Ken and Akuma and put them on the field, all 3 of them at the same time, I'll have 3 Shotokan Karates. And if you have 3 Shotokans, then all Shotos will gain, plus 10 damage on all their attacks or something like that. You know what I mean? And then at the bottom, you might see like Evil Ryu, Kage, and someone else. And you're like, wait a minute. The Satsui no Hado buff is better, but it's hard for me to like build towards that. So I have to think about it. And so that's like what you have to like think about, in your strategy. The other part of the strategy you have to consider is, let's say you have 1 Ryu on the field, and there's 2 Ryus you can buy in this turn. If you buy 2 Ryus, your Ryu goes from a 1-star unit to a 2-star unit, and he becomes bigger, he becomes stronger, he does more damage. Now, if you build 3 of those 2-star units, he becomes a 3-star unit, and that's kind of like the late game unit you want. So it's like a deck building game where you're trying to build up units and stuff like that, and also a game where you come up with like strategies and synergies between your different characters. Let's say you play Sakura. So Sakura, her tags would be Shotokan Karate, but also maybe like Arcade Worker. Her and Blanca are Arcade Workers, and if you get those 2 together, then like, you know what I mean? Like, then they have a bonus. Or, oh yeah, maybe Saikyu, right? So, like, her and Dan both have that category or whatever. So, like, Chun-Li. Chun-Li would be, like, under, like, law enforcement or military. And then maybe Guile's under that classification. Maybe Nash is under that classification. So, when they're all there together, their, like, military bonus is that if they start the fight within 10 feet of each other, they gain bonus health. Or something. You know what I mean? And some bonuses are, like, very easy to get. Like, you need 2 units to get it. Some are 4, some are 6. And the 6 bonuses are usually very difficult to get, but, like, they have bigger benefits and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's very fun for that reason, because, like, when the game starts, you have to, in that snap decision, you're like, shit, I have to pick what unit I want and what item they have. So maybe you grab a unit because they're really good in the early game. Or maybe you grab a unit because they have an item you want. And you're like, all my other options like got stolen. I'll take this one because it has a good item and I can build like stuff on it. So that's what you're thinking when you're playing a game like this. Yeah, it's called an auto battle or whatever. That's like the genre that it's under now. Auto battler. That's like what auto chess / TFT is like. It is not just chess, no. It's really like it reminds me of like a deck building or a drafting kind of style of play for a card game, but live. Why would they call it auto chess? I don't know. But they've renamed it. The genre of it now is called auto battles. Because when the fight starts, like the CPU units, they just fight each other. You don't do the fighting. What you do is the strategizing, the placement on the board, and buying or selling units or equipping items to them. So you can queue up with anywhere from solo to 8 people, and I think it's fun whether you have one person, like you're playing solo, or if you have 3 people or 4 people or 6 people, like whatever it is, it's fun. Because if you lose or whatever, then you can just watch the rest of the fight. And if all of your party's out, you just back out and play another match. So maybe you'll die in that one and you'd be like, shit, I died. And then you could be like, all right, let me spectate and see what's happening with everybody else. And you'd be like, oh, I see what he's building. He's building like this, this, and that. So yeah, it's a little less time commitment than playing a MOBA. Not too much, but a little less time commitment than playing a MOBA. And it's less like, it doesn't take as much demand of just like focusing and like all this like action economy and like, it doesn't take as much mechanical ability. It's mostly about strategizing and understanding like what you're looking for and knowing what your opponent's looking for and blocking stuff. It's fun. After you build and selection, you don't have control anymore. You don't have control during the fight. The only part, so you build everything and you place everything on the board, and then the timer runs out, and then once the timer runs out, the 2 sides of the board fight each other. So after they throw hands, you see which side wins. And if your side wins, you don't take any damage. And you do damage to your opponent based on like the number of units you have left, and you also get extra damage for your guy. So you always do a certain amount of damage. If you have 1 unit left, let's say each unit you have does 2 damage to your opponent or whatever. So if the fight is like 6v6 and you end up with 2 units left, your 2 units do 4 damage to him, and then you do another 2. So you do 6 damage, and you start with 100 health. So you can imagine in big fights, let's say like there's a fight and everything goes crazy and like a big AoE hits and you end up winning with like 6 units. It's like, oh shit, you lose so much life. Positioning is also important too, because let's say that you have Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. He's your unit. His special ability is at the beginning of the match, your opponent's furthest unit, he pulls them in. You can imagine if your opponent's furthest unit is Dalsum, if you pull Dalsum into the middle of all your guys, they're just going to kick the shit out of him and he's dead. So what ends up happening is, my opponent is running Scorpion, so I'm going to put my big beefy unit in the very back. And as soon as the fight starts, Scorpion pulls in fucking Abigail. And all of a sudden, Abigail's right in the middle of all your squishy units. And you're like, oh no. And he just goes, Abigail! And he beats the shit out of them. Right? That's what happened. He beats the shit out of everybody in the back line. And you're like, fuck. So that's why like you have to strategize like, okay, my opponent's building Scorpion, so I'm gonna put my Abigail right here and like put my other guys up close. So you have to like think like, this is the strategy of what I want to do to like against this unit. Or there's units that are like assassins where they leap on you and they just like immediately jump to the furthest unit in the back line and start fighting them. So for that reason, it's the same kind of thing where if you know your opponent is running a build where your opponent's playing a character that teleports in and starts beating the shit out of you, right? You put your big units in the back line so that you don't get smoked. And yes, your opponent is random every round. So you have to make reads about like who you're going to run up against and see their comp. So I mentioned the carousel as well, right? In the beginning, all 8 of you are spawned and there's characters in the middle that are rotating with items on their head, and you all run out and grab it and pull it back. So what ends up happening is, let's say after like a few rounds, 2 or 3 people have died, and there's a new carousel where there's brand new units that are like a little bit stronger and they have different items and stuff. And the way the carousel works then is kind of like a reverse draft. So let's say that like 4 or 5 rounds have gone on, 2 players have died, there's 6 players left. The player with the lowest health gets to choose first. So if you're winning, you're crushing it, you'll be last pick on whatever unit you want to get in the midway point of the game. So there is a benefit sometimes to being in the middle of the pack for a lot of the game. If like things are not going very well, you could get a really good pick on the mid carousel and be like, okay, well now, this whole game I've been really struggling and I only had 2 Abigails. And if I get a 3rd Abigail, my Abigail gets leveled up to level 2. So I really want that. And then when it drops, there's an Abigail on the board, and he's got an item that's really powerful. He's got like fucking, I don't know, Shao Kahn's hammer. And you're like, shit, I have Shao Kahn's hammer. And if I combine Shao Kahn's hammer with Scorpion's spear, then Abigail can attack from range. Oh shit. So you grab him, and then now you're like, shit, I got upgraded Abigail with ranged attacks now. Let's fucking go. So that's why like it's very important to not only think about like what unit you need, but what item you need too. I would definitely play a Street Fighter auto chest. Yeah, that shit would be great. I'd be playing it right now. There's enough characters that you could do classifications pretty easy, because most characters are built on multiple classifications. One classification is like what their background is, and the other classification is like their fighting style. So that's why Ryu is like Shotokan karate and like you know, whatever. I don't know what his background would be. That's his fighting style is Shotokan, right? And his background would be whatever. A Capcom auto chess would be crazy. It would be really fun, I think. Ryu would have World Warrior, maybe. Yeah, that could be like his thing with World Warrior. And they'd pick other people who travel a lot. Wesker would have like Ouroboros and something else. Zero would have Blade Master and Robot. Mega Man would also have Robot. Dante would be like Demon, Blade Master, and Gunslinger sound right for Dante. Yeah. Who else is even a gunslinger in Capcom's list of characters? Yeah, Jill and Chris would have gunslinger. There's a ninja buff in TFT that I think is really cool. The ninja buff works like this. The ninja buff only works if you have 1 ninja or 4 ninjas. That's how it works. It only works like that. The way other buffs always work in the game is like, if you have, let's say the buff, you need 2 units. If you have 3 units, you still keep the buff. Nothing changes. But the ninja buff is only 1 ninja or 4 ninjas. And the way it works is if you have 1 ninja, it's like a buff to this ninja with this amount of whatever. If you have 4 ninjas, then they all get this buff. But if you have 2 ninjas on the field, you don't get the buff. If you have 3, you don't get the buff. I think that's like a really cool design. I like that idea, right? Because the way, like, if you think about a ninja, they either work 1 or they have like a strike force or something, right? Like, I think that's a cool concept for how to do it. This is now going to be a video explaining how auto chess and other auto battlers work on YouTube.